It is Saturday, January 4th, 2024. It is 12:21 p.m., right in the middle of the day. I am in week 4, my final week of this project, which is kind of crazy for me to think about. It's been going well. It's getting harder and harder and harder for me to stay focused on just the idea of getting better at speaking and reading and the performance side of things. Like the rest of it, the money side of it, just keeps trying to compete for my attention. And that's irrelevant. That whole aspect of everything is irrelevant if I cannot train myself up to be a good vocal performer. And I'm just getting started. I'm not even a month into this. So I this morning had to remind myself, like, just stop looking into coaching, stop looking into courses, stop looking into workshops, stop looking into what does a demo cost. I'm so far away from all of that. Just focus on the here and the now, which is me and my voice. So a lot is the same for week 4. Still doing deep diaphragm breathing, neck and shoulder rolls, massaging out the face, doing the gum chews, fake yawning, resonant humming, all of that, the lip trills, the tongue strengthening exercises. I'm keeping the YaYas exercises. Almost all new tongue twisters this week, except I'm bringing back an oldie but a goodie. And then I am changing the reading that I'm going to be doing. And I'll talk more about that when I get to the end, and it's time for that. Yeah. Okay. So, week 4 goals: strengthening the mouth, the tongue, the jaw, improving articulation, working on breath control. Breath control is so hard. And working on clarity of speech and also pacing when I am reading. Let us begin. All right, we're going to start with 5 deep diaphragm breaths. I have to pause everything for just a moment. Sorry about that. Our furnace kicked on because I forgot to turn the heat down, and our furnace is incredibly loud. But this is my situation. These are the conditions in which I am working. Okay, I don't think I did 5 deep breaths, but that's good enough for today. Neck and shoulder rolls. Face massages with gum chews. Gum chews. fake yawning. I have to pause again. Sorry about that. My house is basically made of paper mache, and every single sound from everywhere else in the house comes through into this space. It is not a good recording space. It just isn't, but I don't need it to be a good recording space right now. Because I am working on my voice and improving my voice. However, I did need to go next door and tell my eldest child that his voice is carrying very clearly through into this room, if only for the purposes of privacy and anonymity in these videos that I am posting on YouTube. Keep it down. Okay, so we finished up fake yawning. I'm just going to slow myself down with a couple of breaths here. Just needed to recenter a bit. Refocus and recenter. We are moving into soft, resonant humming to warm up the vocal cords. Water. Moving through these a little bit faster, I feel like, than I usually do. All right. Basic lip trills while shaking my head, no. Four or 5 note scale, up and down. Tongue trills. Tongue trills. Okay, here we go. Tongue trills. I'm totally clipping the mic out on this, aren't I? Oh my god. Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm going to move myself way back. Here we go. Hopefully I don't knock this down. I'm still... Okay, that was really terrible of me, and I apologize. I am trying to keep... somebody said, like, if you do this is a good way to distance the mic from yourself. But this Scarlet solo, man, there's almost no wiggle room with the gain. It's either up enough so that I can hear it, or it's like... I do not recommend the Focusrite Scarlet solo. Sorry. It's just very entry level, and the gain situation really exposes that. Okay, anyway. Tongue strengthening exercises. At least those are quiet. YaYas exercises. Ya 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 All right. QEQR. 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 A lot of sighing from me today. See? My goodness. Moving into tongue twisters, we've got a bunch of new ones today. Most of them are pretty short. I think none of them are going to trick me into profanity, so that's always a plus. The first one, to work on my D sounds. Down the deep, damp, dark, dank den. Down the deep, damp, dark, dank den. Down the deep, dank, 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 dark, dank den. How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? To work on my F sounds. 4 furious friends fought for the phone. 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 I don't know if that sounds good or not. To work on my J sounds. J sounds. James just jostled Jean gently. 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 To work on my S sounds. So, crazy sibilants. I have chipped teeth, 3 of them. They're probably not visible, but I have 3 chipped teeth, and I'm actually getting them fixed. They've been chipped forever, like decades, honestly. But finally I'm pulling the trigger on getting them fixed. Okay, anyway, and who knows if that's going to help. To work on my S sounds. Moses supposes his toes are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toes are posies of roses, as Moses supposes his toes to be. I grew up with this, or a slight variation of this. Moses supposes his toes are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toes are posies of roses, as Moses supposes his toes to be. Moses supposes his toes are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toes are posies of roses, as Moses supposes his toes to be. Moses supposes his toes are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toes are posies of roses, as Moses supposes his toes to be. Moses supposes his toes are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toes are posies of roses, as Moses supposes his toes to be. If I am blowing the top of your head off with that sibilance, I really apologize. Okay. Ew, I left this in here? Why did I do that to myself? Probably because I've been struggling with it. Okay. To work on my R sounds. If you must cross a course-cross cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the cross-course cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. Ugh. Okay. If you must cross a coarse-cross cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the coarse cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. If you must cross a coarse-cross cow across a crowded cow crossing. Oh, I can hear myself clipping this mic out. I'm pushing it back a little bit. Boop. Just go back a little bit. Turn it a little bit towards me again. Stay. All right, let's see if that helps. If you must cross a coarse-cross cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the coarse cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. If you must cross a coarse-cross cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the coarse cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. If you must cross a coarse-cross cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the coarse cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. If you must cross a coarse-cross cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the coarse cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. Moving on. I don't like that tongue twister. Okay, and then I brought back an oldie but goodie. This is a favorite from week 1 and 2. To improve differentiation between different sounding words. Listen to that. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter better. So Betty bought a better bit of butter. It's still fun to say. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter bitter. So Betty bought a better bit of butter. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter better. So Betty bought a bit of better butter. One more time. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter better. So Betty bought a better bit of butter. Man, I can hear everything in these headphones. Everything. I can hear the faucet running. Everything. And one day, that might be a problem. But it's really not right now. Because again, this project is about my voice, not the sound quality of the room I'm in. Okay. Reading. We are moving into the reading session. Okay. This week, I'm practicing reading from Agatha Christie's novel, The Man in the Brown Suit. This book, originally published in 1924, is public domain. So, let me explain. The reason why I chose to do this, well, one thing, public domain, right? No problems with copyright infringement, contract infringement, stepping on author's toes or anything like that. Public domain just makes it easier. I'm going to move this a little closer for the reading section so that I can soften my voice up. I tend to use my classroom teaching voice a lot, and I need to learn how to soften and just read a little bit more gently. Anyway, so public domain I decided to go with, and then I wanted to read something that would be a little bit exciting. So I was like, well, maybe like an Agatha Christie novel. So I chose The Man in the Brown Suit. And specifically, I went for The Man in the Brown Suit because I could get it on my Kindle, so I can read off of my Kindle when I do this. But I also got an audiobook version of it through Audible. So I will be able to listen to my performance of it and compare it against the performance of a professional narrator, which I think will be really, really helpful. Okay, so again, this is The Man in the Brown Suit by Agatha Christie. Prologue. Nadina, the Russian dancer who had taken Paris by storm, swayed to the sound of the applause, bowed and bowed again. Her narrow black eyes narrowed themselves still more. The long line of her scarlet mouth curved faintly upwards. Enthusiastic Frenchmen continued to beat the ground appreciatively as the curtain fell with a swish, hiding the reds and blues and magentas of the bizarre decor. In a swirl of blue and orange draperies, the dancer left the stage. A bearded gentleman received her enthusiastically in his arms. It was the manager. "Magnificent, petite, magnificent," he cried. "Tonight you have surpassed yourself." He kissed her gallantly on both cheeks in a somewhat matter-of-fact manner. Madame Nadina accepted the tribute with the ease of long habit and passed on to her dressing-room, where bouquets were heaped carelessly everywhere, marvelous garments of futuristic design hung on pegs, and the air was hot and sweet with the scent of the massed blossoms and with the more sophisticated perfumes and essences. Jean, the dresser, ministered to her mistress, talking incessantly and pouring out a stream of fulsome compliments. A knock at the door interrupted the flow. Jean went to answer it, and returned with a card in her hand. "Madame will receive?" "Let me see." The dancer stretched out a languid hand, but at the sight of the name on the card, Count Sergius Pavlovich, a sudden flicker of interest came into her eyes. "I will see him." I think that's supposed to be a Russian accent. Do I know how to do a Russian accent? Do I know how to do any accent? Da, I will see him. The mais peignoir, Jean, and quickly. Da, I will see him. The mais peignoir, Jean, and quickly. And when the count comes, you may go. Bien, madame. Jean brought the peignoir, an exquisite wisp of corn-colored chiffon and ermine. Nadine slipped into it and sat smiling to herself, whilst one long white hand beat a slow tattoo on the glass of the dressing-table. The Count was prompt to avail himself of the privilege accorded to him, a man of medium height, very slim, very elegant, very pale, extraordinarily weary. In feature, little to take hold of, a man difficult to recognize again if one left his mannerisms out of account. He bowed over the dancer's hand with exaggerated courtliness. "Madame, this has been a pleasure indeed." So much Jean heard before she went out, closing the door behind her. Alone with her visitor, a subtle change came over Nadina's smile. "Compatriots though we are, we will not speak Russian, I think," she observed. "Since we neither of us know a word of the language, it might be as well," agreed her guest. By common consent, they dropped into English, and nobody, now that the Count's mannerisms had dropped from him, could doubt that it was his native language. He had, indeed, started life as a quick-change music hall artist in London. "You had great success tonight," he remarked. "I congratulate you." "All the same," said the woman, "I am disturbed. My position is not what it was. The suspicions aroused during the war have never died down. I am continually watched and spied upon." "But no charge of espionage was ever brought against you?" "Our chief lays his plans too carefully for that." Oh, sorry, that was Nadina's line. "Our chief lays his plans too carefully for that." "Long life to the colonel," said the Count, smiling. "Amazing news, is it not, that he means to retire? To retire! Just like a doctor, or a butcher, or a plumber, "Or any other businessman," finished Nadina. "It should not surprise us. That is what the colonel has always been, an excellent man of business. He has organized crime as another man might organize a boot factory. Without committing himself, he has planned and directed a series of stupendous coups, embracing every branch of what we might call his profession. Jewel robberies, forgery, espionage, the latter very profitable in wartime, sabotage, discreet assassination. There is hardly anything he has not touched. Wisest of all, he knows when to stop. The game begins to be dangerous. He retires gracefully, with an enormous fortune. Said the Count doubtfully. It is rather upsetting for all of us. We are at a loose end, as it were. But we are being paid off, on a most generous scale. Some undercurrent of mockery in her tone made the man look at her sharply. She was smiling to herself, and the quality of her smile aroused his curiosity, but he proceeded diplomatically. Yes, the Colonel has always been a great paymaster. I attribute much of his success to that, and to his invariable plan of providing a suitable scapegoat. A great brain, undoubtedly a great brain, and an apostle of the maxim, if you want a thing done safely, do not do it yourself. Here we are, every one of us incriminated up to the hilt and absolutely in his power, and not one of us has anything on him. He paused, almost as though he were expecting her to disagree with him, but she remained silent, smiling to herself as before. Not one of us, he mused. Still, you know, he is superstitious, the old man. Years ago, I believe, he went to one of those fortune-telling people. She prophesied a lifetime of success, but declared that his downfall would be brought about by a woman. He had interested her now. She looked up eagerly. That is strange, very strange. Through a woman, you say? He smiled and shrugged his shoulders. Doubtless, now that he has retired, he will marry some young society beauty who will disperse his millions faster than he acquired them. Nadina shook her head. No, that is not the way of it. Listen, my friend. Tomorrow I go to London. But your contract here? I shall be away only one night, and I go incognito, like royalty. No one will ever know that I have left France. And why do you think that I go? Hardly for pleasure at this time of year. January, a detestable foggy month. It must be for profit, eh? Exactly. She rose and stood in front of him, every graceful line of her arrogant with pride. You said just now that none of us had anything on the chief. You were wrong. I have. I, a woman, have had the wit and, yes, the courage, for it needs courage, to double-cross him. You remember the De Beer diamonds? Yes, I remember. At Kimberley, just before the war broke out. I had nothing to do with it, and I never heard the details. The case was hushed up for some reason, was it not? A fine haul, too. 100,000 pounds worth of stones. 2 of us worked it, under the Colonel's orders, of course, and it was then that I saw my chance. You see, the plan was to substitute some of the De Beer diamonds for some sample diamonds brought from South America by 2 young prospectors. Ugh. You see, the plan was to substitute some of the De Beer diamonds for some sample diamonds brought from South America by 2 young prospectors who happened to be in Kimberley at the time. Suspicion was then bound to fall on them. Very clever, interpolated the Count approvingly. The Colonel is always clever. Well, I did my part, but I also did one thing which the Colonel had not foreseen. I kept some of the South American stones. 1 or 2 are unique, and could easily be proved never to have passed through De Beer's hands. With these diamonds in my possession, I have the whip-hand of my esteemed chief. Once the 2 young men are cleared, his part in the matter is bound to be suspected. I have said nothing all these years. I have been content to know that I had this weapon in reserve. But now matters are different. I want my price, and it will be big. I might almost say a staggering price." "Extraordinary," said the Count. "And doubtless you carry these diamonds about with you everywhere?" His eyes roamed gently around the disordered room. Nadina laughed softly. "You need to suppose nothing of the sort. I am not a fool. The diamonds are in a safe place, where no one will dream of looking for them." "I never thought you a fool, my dear lady, but may I venture to suggest that you are somewhat foolhardy? The Colonel is not the type of man to take kindly to being blackmailed, you know." "I am not afraid of him," she laughed. "There is only one man I have ever feared, and he is dead." The man looked at her curiously. "Let us hope that he will not come to life again, then," he remarked lightly. "What do you mean?" cried the dancer sharply. The Count looked slightly surprised. "I only meant that resurrection would be awkward for you," he explained. "A foolish joke." She gave a sigh of relief. "Oh, no, he is dead all right. Killed in the war. He was a man who once loved me." "In South Africa?" asked the Count negligently. "Yes, since you ask it, in South Africa." "That is your native country, is it not?" She nodded. Her visitor rose and reached for his hat. "Well," he remarked, "you know your own business best, but if I were you, I should fear the Colonel far more than any disillusioned lover. He is a man whom it is particularly easy to underestimate." She laughed scornfully. "As if I did not know him after all these years." "I wonder if you do," he said softly. "I very much wonder if you do." "Oh, I am not a fool, and I am not alone in this. The South African mailboat docks at Southampton tomorrow, and on board her is a man who has come specially from Africa at my request, and who has carried out certain orders of mine. The Colonel will have not one of us to deal with, but two. Is that wise?" "It is necessary." "Are you sure of this man?" A rather peculiar smile played over the dancer's face. "I am quite sure of him. He is inefficient, but perfectly trustworthy." She paused, and then added, in an indifferent tone of voice, "As a matter of fact, he happens to be my husband." That is the prologue from The Man in the Brown Suit by Agatha Christie. Okay, that is this journal entry done, and yeah, week 4 begun. This 30-day project is almost done.